Good morning and welcome. I'm so excited to be here live with you today. So I am Vicky. I am the founder of High Performance Executive, where I support ambitious women to reclaim their body, mind, and energy without sacrificing their career or time with their loved ones or falling into that burnout trap. So today we're going to be diving into something I know so many high-performing women feel but rarely speak about openly: the cost of constantly doing it all. So we're talking about burnout, boundaries, asking for help, and how to redefine success on your terms, not society. So I am joined by Beth, who is an executive powerhouse, current client, but also has a strong background within the health and wellness space. And we're so glad to have you with us today. So feel free to drop anything in the comments or questions as we go. We'll try to keep an eye on the chat. However, if not, we can follow up afterwards. So let's dive in. We've got a few topics we want to cover today. So in terms of where to start, I think what would be an interesting place for us is to look at, like, why is it that so many ambitious women wear that being busy as a badge of honor, and what's the actual cost of doing so? So I've got some thoughts on this, but perhaps Beth, what are your thoughts on that, if I was to say that to you?
Yeah, I feel like this has been my life for the last several decades of just being a human, being career driven. But if I had to, like, the way that it kind of came about for me is in a couple of different areas. One was like the validation piece. As a very high performing, career driven woman, and have been since my early 20s, I was constantly getting external validation that was a good thing. Anytime I would talk to somebody, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy, and list off the things, and people would be like, oh wow, that's great. And it kind of feeds your ego a little bit, particularly as you're wanting to do more and more with your career and other areas of your life. It was kind of that validation. It was just like, yeah, you're doing the right thing. Keep doing it. Meanwhile, you're constantly burning yourself out. And then the next stage for me got to was like survival. It was, I had to do that. All these other aspects of our lives come in, and it's different for everybody. For me, it was children, and there's a host of other things. Some people are taking care of parents. Like, it just keeps coming at you, and it doesn't stop. So we've created this, rolling downhill, and it just keeps coming at us, and we are now surviving. I can't stop, right? My kids need me. My family needs me. I'm trying to build my career. I'm on an upward trajectory. I can't stop that. And now I'm just surviving in this space. And then the final piece is what I would say, where I got to most recently in my personal journey, is habit. It became my normal. It became my habit. And I didn't know how to stop. Even when things were slowing down in some areas of my life, I didn't know how to change that frequency. And I was just operating way, way up here and doing things that were not value add, doing things that were burning me out, doing things that didn't need to be done, but I didn't know how not to. I didn't know how to slow down. So that's kind of how it culminated through my life and my career. I'm curious to hear, Vicky, what your experience has been with this.
Yeah, and that's such an interesting, actually, to hear you talk about that. The fact that it's come from, like, it's kind of been the whole way through, but in different phases. The fact that at first it was getting that external validation to actually doing it to survive, to getting to the point of almost like not knowing how to do things differently. And I think for me, I couldn't agree more with that. And I think that journey in a slightly different way was similar to me, but maybe in a slightly different way around. But I think for me, when I was reflecting on this topic, it almost came back to the part that I don't think and maybe comes into what you said about external as well, but it came to the point where it was almost like, in my mind, almost taught that way, that actually, like, productivity, like, equals worth. And that actually being busy, or for me personally, felt like it made me feel like I mattered. And it was almost like that part of that enoughness within myself that I didn't have. So like the busyness almost kept me going with it. But then ultimately the cost of that was, if I'm honest, so many different phases of like hitting that burnout and hitting that part and feeling like I actually had a bit of a fractured identity. And I was just constantly running on fumes. So it was almost getting to that point of having to relearn, of almost being like, actually, who am I? And having that check-in without needing that external validation, but almost then taking that step back and being like, actually understanding what it is that I need. And it's so uncomfortable, because I don't know if you can resonate with this, but like busy felt easy for me. Like it was hard, don't get me wrong. It's really, really hard. But when you get to that point, when you look back, and it was almost like, how do I do things differently? Like, how can I be different when my self-worth is tied up in this, when my identity feels like it's tied up in this, when I don't know any different? And I only know how to say yes. And I know for me, the thing that kind of spearheaded or changed a little bit for me was realizing how much me saying yes all the time, like what I was actually saying no to. And not only was that myself, but I was like, there were so many opportunities or things I was like, what am I missing out on in life? And taking that pause almost helped me. But I think it took me hitting burnout to get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can resonate that with that as well. I am somebody who thrives in a very fast-paced environment. And that's where I thrive. And it's very difficult to navigate that. You cannot continue to be in that fast-paced environment in every aspect of your life all the time. But I thrive there. I'm comfortable there. And a lot of topics that we talk about outside of this one is, it's what you're used to. Because your brain is wired in a particular way, it doesn't mean it's good. But that's something that was difficult for me. Is like, how do I thrive in another type of environment? How do I thrive in that fast-paced environment sometimes, but also give myself the time and space that I need to understand who I am? I mean, I can, in full transparency, I don't know that I asked myself that question until I was in my 40s. It was like I was just going. I sometimes describe my life as being on a treadmill and somebody is like clicking up by 0.1, 0.1, 0.1 each year. And all of a sudden I was sprinting and I did not know how to stop. I couldn't get off, because it's like jumping out of a moving car, you're not going to do that. And you don't know how to slow down, but it reaches that point. And I think that burnout that we're talking about, for some of us, it hits us later, and sometimes it'll hit us throughout our journeys. But when it hits you, and it hits you hard, you know it.
You really do. And I think that's a big part where I'm hoping some of the things that we covered today, like, sit home with people, because I know I wish back then I knew some of the things I did now. So I'm really hoping like having these types of conversations do help others, because I know that I'm constantly reminding my clients every single day that true power isn't in like how much you do. It's like how you lead yourself through these times. And there is so much power of being able to actually like look at yourself and go within to hear that. But I think because we're so used to looking external and things are so busy, so fast, so here, there, and everywhere, it's hard to do that. So perhaps actually like what might be helpful is to maybe have a look at what some of those early burnout pieces, or like literally maybe some of like the signs as such that we could look at, like, because they are often really overlooked. And I would love it if we can start to recognize what these are before it gets to the point where people hit breaking point. Like I've got quite a few for myself, but I mean, what for you did you find like in the lead up to burnout, or things that you look out for now perhaps to avoid that?
Yeah. And I will say that I look out for these things now. It took me a very, very long time. And I'm saying this because anybody who's listening, do not beat yourself up over being in a situation like this. So, it wasn't until very recently that I was able to, or that it's still a work in progress for me to pause and look at my situation and what's actually going on. Things like losing motivation for things that I would otherwise enjoy, whether that's your career, whether that's in your personal life. An example would be, you run a meeting each week at your business, and it's something that you're really proud of and something that you really enjoy, and you love running this meeting. And now all of a sudden it feels like a burden. And you're like, gosh, I hate this. So that's something to take a look at in your personal life too. If there are things you used to enjoy, social, that's a big one. When you start pulling back socially, when you would typically be socializing with friends and family, and you stop doing that. For me, sometimes it's this organization and agitation. So I am naturally a very just regimented and organized personality. And when I start to feel agitated about the organization and feeling like I just can't get it together, that's a big one for me. And if I had in my last several decades been able to acknowledge and recognize that, it would have changed my life, honestly. I unfortunately have not, I haven't been addressing these things until much later in my life, until I've hit that wall. I mean, like smack into the wall. But those are a couple of things that come up with me that I need to pause and look inward and, ask myself some real important questions.
Totally. And this is the part, like, as well, like hearing this, the amount of times I've looked back on things and I'm like, you know what, it takes sometimes, as much as I don't wish burnout on anyone, but like in life, right, a lot of the lessons that we learn are through the doing and being like, actually, like, I don't want that to happen, and taking that step back. And I think it's like hearing some of the things that you say, I think this is the part I can easily look back now and pick out these parts. Like, I know very similar, like that whole irritability piece. Like, I'm not really an irritable person, like, at all. And looking back now, I can know that there's huge mood drops, and perhaps the way that I speak to people, the way that I speak to myself, like, it's really out of character, but it's hard in those moments to have, like, to see it or to feel it. It's almost, didn't even notice that. I can pick up on it now. But I agree, like, in terms of that, like that motivation piece, like, I'd find that I would get a huge amount of like resentment towards things that I would usually love, whether that was work-wise, whether that was personal life. And it was like everything almost became like a bit of a chore. And even things like when I would have like huge successes and hit these big milestones, again, both professionally and personally, like it felt kind of empty. Like, it didn't really feel like there was anything there. And I think ultimately for me during those times, it was like, it didn't matter. I wasn't sleeping well, but like, it didn't seem to matter how much sleep I got. Like, I was just constantly exhausted, like constantly, and just almost feeling like all I wanted to do all day was just like drink coffee and switch off and escape from everything. And it's so hard because as high performance, right, we're usually in situations where like, that's not necessarily an option. But I think that's where I was. That's where I wanted to be. I just wanted to be away, like almost run away from everything, which is not a place that you want to be.
Yeah, and sleep is something that I just have recently, within the last, I would say 18 months, well, it kind of went through an ebb and flow with COVID, but I didn't realize pre-COVID how much sleep was impacting what I was doing every day. I was probably sleeping 5 hours a night, 6 hours a night, not intentionally, but I was constantly busy. It was one of those things, put the kids to bed and then do some work, and then, oh my gosh, the kitchen is a wreck, laundry hasn't been done, the house looks like a tornado went through it, and I would just be running all over the place. And when COVID hit, I got myself on a much, much, much different schedule because all of the external things kind of shut down, and my body felt for the first time what it was like to get 7 or 8 hours of sleep. And I couldn't believe it. I literally couldn't believe it. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what to do. I feel so good. I don't know what this feeling is. Yeah. Super uncomfortable, but this goes back to the things in our wiring in our brain. And while it was super healthy for me, it felt very, very uncomfortable because my body wasn't used to it. And now that, things are back to, maybe they're not back to normal, but back to the normal level of busyness, it's having to prioritize that sleep and realizing that some of the things that I just listed, the laundry, the house, the whatever, it's okay. It's not that important.
In the grand scheme of things, that's the part sometimes, but everything seems it. I think in those moments, it can be like, it's incredibly overwhelming. So even for me, I know a big important part during those times is be able to like take that step back and realize like how disconnected I am. But when you're in the throes of all of these things, like, it's not necessarily that straightforward. Like you said, I mean, if you've got all of these things, like, even if you're aware that you're getting closer to this point, like, it doesn't make all the other things go away, right? Like, they still exist. Like, you've still got all the things to tick off on a daily basis, whether some of them are less important than not. So I guess in terms of that, then, like, for you, and I know for me, this was not an easy one, but at what point, or like, what would you say, being someone that like wore busy as a badge of honor as such, like, and you're so used to doing everything all of the time, like, what would you say is like the right way to, I guess, ask for help? And like, also, how do you know who it is to turn to in those moments?
That's a really great question. And I'm kind of smiling because unfortunately for me, in my if I reflect on the last, 20 years of my life, I didn't ever ask for help until I was literally in tears, just complete and utter meltdown, where it's like, I can't do this. And the people around me are like not used to seeing me that way. And they're like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? We need to, something needs to happen. So that is, I would never, never, never recommend that to anybody. And part of it is just letting your ego go and asking for help. And most of us have people in our lives that want to help us. Friends, family, community. Most of us have at least a couple people that are just waiting and wanting to help and support, whether it's us, they're just, and somebody said something to me and it like really rang true. It's like, don't rob the people around you from what they need. They need to be helping somebody, and it's not always about you. And I just never let my ego, I could not let my ego push that aside. I call it my little gremlin now, where I'm like, pushing her away all the time. But sometimes it's just as simple as just asking. It was an ego thing for me. And it was this mentality that I can do it all. And I don't need help. I don't need help with any of this. I've got this. And it could not have been further from the truth. Now I know better, but there's all sorts of things you can do. And depending on your situation, you can have somebody come and clean your house. You can, this isn't financially viable for many, and it certainly wasn't for me, but if it is you, great. Have somebody cleaning your meal prep. Now there's services to pick up your laundry into your laundry. You could, your food shopping and meal prep stuff. I mean, there's so many different ways. But if those aren't financially feasible options, because I know, like they said, it certainly wasn't for me at the time, is there are people around you that want to help you. Ask them for the help. I'm fairly certain that on a weekly basis, at least one person in my life asked me what they could do for me.
Yeah.
I ignored it and I was like, nothing, I'm good, I got this. And all I needed to do was say, oh my gosh, yes, can you please pick up my daughter from practice today? Or can you please, when you're at the grocery store, can you pick something up? Any little thing would have helped. And that is probably my biggest takeaway in reflecting in all of this is it's just your ego that isn't letting you accept the help that people are trying to give you.
Yeah, totally. And you know what? It's so interesting that, like, hearing you say that, especially around, like, because I know one of the biggest ones again for me was, like, in my head, like, I felt like asking for help or like accepting help, not even asking it, like accepting for help. Like, I saw that as like a weakness, and I couldn't have been more wrong. It was almost like, then it made me less capable. Like, I wasn't able to do these things myself. And like, I think one of the things now, I don't know how many times on a daily basis I say this, like but now, and I can hear it myself, and I say it to so many others, like it's not that you are incapable. It's just like, at this moment in time, like, you don't need to be doing this. Like, if there are others around you that want to help and support you, like, I can say it easily now, but at the time I definitely didn't want to hear it. Like, it's actually like, it's an incredible thing, and it's really empowering for others. Like, if you're actually doing that and you have people around you, and I think for me, what made me feel comfortable at first was like almost like starting small, like almost admitting that I could use like a little bit of support, like, and also looking to people around me that I was willing to accept that from. So it was almost like, because there were so many people that could, but for me, it was like for my ego to eventually like get on board with it. Now it's fine. I've got zero ego in the situation. But at the time, it was almost like people that I knew could see my strength, but also my softness. And like that for me made me feel okay. Like, it made me feel a little bit better to have those. And often it came to those that were closest to me that could see both. And I've had it with clients before. Like, I had one client, and like, coming back to what you said, which was really interesting, is like, actually she started to ask her husband for like small bits of help, because she used to do everything, small bits of help. And he genuinely turned around to her and said, like, thank you so much. I genuinely used to feel like emasculated, that you wouldn't let me do anything. Like, you wouldn't let me help you. And now, like, it's such a different setup, whereas like a family, they get out to work on all these different projects, but we just assume that it's almost like we're putting on others, or that like we need to do everything. And it's like, actually, like, what are you taking away from others by actually just doing this all yourself? And that can go both from a personal and a work perspective? Like, what about the people within your organization that actually really want to step up or want to grow within the company, and then you're just taking everything away? And it's almost like, actually, as leaders, we have to be role models and consider, like, one, how these people are looking at us, but two, also actually, like, what are we robbing them from? Like, what is it that they may really, we're like, oh, everyone's busy. And it's like, yeah, everyone is busy, but equally, like, don't make any assumptions there. Like, have you spoken to these people, like how they want to develop and grow? There are things you're doing currently that actually could be delegated to someone that's sat there being like, please pick me. Like, but we don't often ask that question, I don't think, enough.
No, I completely agree, both in personal and professional. As for me, I am a bit of a perfectionist, and I like I had mentioned before, I'm very regimented and organized, and I like things done a certain way. I don't think I'm alone in that, but letting go of some of that, both at work and in personal life. To your point, you've got people, if you've got people on your team that are looking to do things, it's okay. You give them tasks and you delegate things, and they'll do it in the way that they want to do it. And it will still get done. It may not be done the way that you would have done it, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong. Same thing at home. I hear this a lot, and it was certainly like this for a long time for me is, you know, you like the dishes done a certain way. You like the dishwasher loaded a certain way. I mean, these sound like silly things, right? But when you're in the throes of it, you're just like, you know what? It's going to take you 30 minutes to do this. It'll take me 5. I'm just going to do it. You know, especially if you've got, you know, kids that you're trying to get to help around the house. It's just like, oh my gosh, let me just do this. And it's just, in the end, it doesn't gain you anything by taking on all of the burden. And I love that about the husband. And like, sometimes they just want to help, but they know sometimes that if they get in the way, they're going to be pushed aside, or if they don't do it right, they're going to be emasculated or whatever. And it's just, oh my gosh, when we look at our whole lives, like, this is not it. This is not it.
No, exactly that. And I think this is the part sometimes we're thinking very much like, and this might sound odd, but like, actually, how selfish are we being here that we're only considering ourselves in this situation? And it's weird for me to say that, because I often find, especially with high performers, that actually, like, there is so much guilt and so much giving to others, but actually, like, as in perhaps overgiving in a lot of ways, but actually, like, sometimes the pulling back part is, or refusing to allow others to help you. I'd argue that's just as selfish. But anyway,
yeah. Like, I agree.
But I think then, in terms of, like, I guess, progress, like, I know, and again, this was for me, like, I used to fear so much, like, if I slowed down in any way, shape, or form, that it would derail my progress, or things wouldn't happen, or everything would kind of, I had very drastic thoughts in terms of what could actually happen. But what was for you was important in terms of, like, perhaps reframing that mindset around actually being able to slow down, and it not being a setback? Like, what strategies work for you?
This is a really, really tough one, because, you know, first off, it's not always that obvious where the slowdown should happen, right? I would argue to say that it's never obvious unless you're hitting the wall, right? Then it's just everything slows down, but it's not always obvious. You know, every woman that I know, including myself, has had to do some level of grinding it out and hustling in order to get to where they are. And that's not a bad thing. It's knowing when to grind it out and hustle and when you pull back. And that constant grind and the constant hustle is not sustainable. I think we know this logically, but we still continue to try and do it. It's not sustainable. And in the end, it really isn't going to get you where you want to go. But you can't see that in the moment. So it's super important. And so, you know, a practice that I've been putting in place is reflecting and pausing and knowing when to hustle and grind it out and when not to. Because, you know, and this brings up a very, like, triggering word for some people, just balance. And I used to think that balance was, in my very compartmentalized, organized brain, was like this much time on this much time on this much time on this much time on this. But what it really is for me now is spending time, effort, and energy where it needs to be spent that day, that week, that month. And sometimes it is career. Sometimes it is hustling and grinding it out to get the next promotion. Maybe you're starting a new business. Maybe you're, I don't know, whatever it is. But you have to get buy-in from the people around you. That's another thing that I've learned through the years, is that the people around you want to support you. If you talk to them and let them know, hey, this next month is going to be rough. I've got a bunch of travel. I'm going to be doing these things for this purpose. I'm going to need your help this month. They're likely to say, great, let's do it. And if you don't take those proactive actions, you end up continuing to try to do it all. People around you can get very resentful of, what you're trying to accomplish. But this is a bit of a long-winded way to say it's tough and it's not obvious. So you've got to kind of figure it out on your own. And I will say, talk to people you trust, talk to people who have been there before, have a mentoring system, a program, friends that can help you figure this out. Nobody's doing this on their own. I can tell you that right now. Nobody is getting where they are on their own. So don't think that you should be or could be doing it yourself either.
No, I couldn't agree with. And this is the part, and it's like, I love what you said about the balance there, because I think it's so true. And also I would think, like you say, it's almost, for me, I see it like seasons as well. And it's being aware of the season. Sometimes you can be aware, like you said, if you've got things coming up, you've got like a really busy month, you're aware. Sometimes not. But I think being as aware, like almost checking in with yourself, but also, absolutely checking in with others if you know in advance or like during or whatever it is, like communicating that. And I agree, like it's obviously in that moment, the more aware people are, the more they can step in, whether you even know when you need help or not. But I think for me, a big reframe was like, maybe like slightly different way that I thought of this in terms of like slowing down, was more like, I have to remember, like, it doesn't matter, like all of these things, there's going to be 100 billion things to do each day. There'll be some points, like, I don't think, that the whole never ending to do this. There is already so many different things. There can be fires to be put out left, right, and center. There's all of the, whether they be personal work, 100 different things. But actually for me, like what I realized was like, resting wasn't like a reward, like it was essential. Like, and actually being able to take pause and moments, like it's a requirement. Like if I'm going to continue to perform for like my family, for my loved ones, for like being the leader within the organization and do all these different things, like I have to allow myself an element of rest. I'm not saying that it's always, you're going to get your 8 hours sleep a night and you're going to do X hours, like that's not, but it's almost doing what you can and allowing yourself space when you can to come up for air and breathe. And it is an essential, because otherwise you will be forced to slow down. I think reframing that for me, like, the whole term, like it's probably overused, but like self-care isn't selfish. Like it's not, it is genuinely an essential thing. And remembering, like, if you allow yourself rest in some way, shape or form, like it's actually going to sharpen your thinking. It's going to deepen your impact and actually expand your capacity. But we often think about it as the other way. So it's almost like, what's that going to stop me from doing? It's like, actually, what is it going to allow you to do? Because for me, like with a lot of the successful women that I coach, like they don't just hustle anymore. They actually focus a bit more on their recovery. It doesn't mean there aren't moments where they have to, but it's not just a constant hustle and a constant grind and then forced to slow down, recover a little bit, go again. Like the cycle doesn't always continue anymore. And it's how we can look at for even small ways to top up like our body battery, and so that we can keep going. So rather than it like draining it, forced to slow down, then it's almost like, how can we keep some even keel here so that we can continue to perform at this high level that we want to? Because not going to lie, I think we both, Beth, can say that we like to work to very high expectations. Like if we want to do that, then we have to consider like, what's our body battery telling us? Like, when was the last time we checked in? Like, when was the last time we just breathed or allowed ourselves a moment, like go for a short walk, go to bed 10 minutes early? It doesn't have to be big drastic things, but it's almost being like, all those little tiny things that we might do will soon add up.
Yeah, for sure. And that's still something that I'm learning and having to consciously work to put into my days, into my weeks. It doesn't come naturally. It feels uncomfortable. And while I know logically these are things that are going to help me. Just like you described, it's still does not come natural to make that time each day. It's one thing if you're, planning a vacation in 3 months, but that's the ebb and like this, what you're describing. It's daily. It's daily resting of your brain. It's daily taking a minute to look internally. These are not easy things that we're talking about here. Just so people are aware, it's these are hard things that have to be put into practice. And for my own personal experience, forced, because I would it is easier for me, and I'm going to say easy. None of it's easy. It's easier for me when I have a 5-minute break to run and change the laundry and unload the dishwasher and, tick off some other boxes than it is for me to sit and listen to what my body needs. Way easier for me to go do those other things. Is it helping me? Nope. Is it getting me where I want to go? Nope. But it comes natural. So when I say easy, it's because it's habitual and the way that I've always operated. But I think based on all of the things we're talking about here, I think it's obvious that that's not how I want to be operating. And, if there are others out there that also do not want to be operating out there at that high frequency, there's hope. It takes practice, but it can be done. I'm living proof that it can be done.
Well, this is the part, and I can sit here as well. For me, I'm a high performance coach. I'm a holistic health coach. I still am a constant work in progress. I'm not perfect. I haven't got all this completely nailed down and smash it every single day. I also had, you and I had a conversation yesterday about grounding, and actually, there are moments where we do go a little left field or a little bit whatever it might be, and it's actually a big powerful thing for me is also having perhaps an external but an internal check-in, but also I think there is a amount of power of having that little external check-in as well. And I think sometimes it's being able to pause, whether that's with someone or alone. I think that for me has been the biggest part. And it's so hard because when you're so busy and you're so under the pump, the thought of pausing for even a second, and even when you do pause, the thought of trying to think about what you need can be so overwhelming. So for me, having things and I do this, we've done this before, having lists of things in those moments that you might need, or whatever it is, when you're out of a situation, when you're in the thick of it, it's hard. So if you have some kind of plan or go to when things get insanely busy, it's almost I have a little checklist, and I'll go in and be okay, something doesn't feel right. I even said about looking at today and some of the ways that I know when I'm close to burnout, and it's I can feel it, I'll clench my jaw, or my digestion goes off, or I'll have massive fatigue, and I'm just constantly restless. Even when I'm tired, I'm exhausted, but I'm restless. And because I'm aware of these things now, I'm oh, actually, okay, I need to open my list. I need to I don't like that it sometimes does get there, but there are moments when it does. And it is that part of being I have a list now, and I'm okay, what do I need? Let's look at this list. Then pick one thing and just go and do it. One thing. And it could be simple things 2 minutes of breath work. It could be put your shoes on, go outside for a walk, just breathe in some fresh air. It could be, okay, tonight you need to get to bed earlier. It could be even you know what, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I'm just going to call someone today, and just take a few minutes just to talk and just get out of the head. And it can be so many different things, but I think pause for me has been huge. And again, I'm not perfect at it. I still have my moments, but I think the more we learn on these journeys and hear from others, which is another reason why we wanted to do this today, it really helps, not to feel, I used to think it was a me thing. I was I'm the problem, it's me, but actually I would easily say, I think I can confidently say this is definitely across the board thing, and it's working out what works for us, but also it really helps sometimes to hear how other people cope with it as well.
Exactly. And I love my self-soothing list that you have encouraged me to create. I love my list. They're not things that I think about at all, really, but I have that list when I'm feeling overwhelmed, when I'm feeling all of the things that you described, and the way that my body, where the way it comes out in my body, it is something as simple as, okay, you need to walk away. You need to step away from the computer. You need to step away, put on your shoes, walk around the block. To your point, it doesn't have to be, having a spa day. It could be a couple minutes of breath work, and it really, really does help, and it really does make a difference. For so many years, I just convinced myself that I don't need that. Like, that's what good is that going to do? All it is doing is taking me away from all of these other things that I could and should be doing. My ego gets in the way of my health and, where I need to go a lot. I'm constantly pushing her away, saying, pausing and taking a break. You're being lazy. Why can't you handle this? What do you mean you can't do all of this? You should be able to do everything. Of course you can do it all. So there's a big component of that too.
Yeah, I think this is the part. And I think having just these little strategies, these small things, like this is the part, it makes such a huge thing on this part with these journeys as well. And one of the big things for my journey, was, I guess, taking that step back and redefining a lot of what success looked like for me. Because I think something you said earlier as well, which resonated a lot, was and actually, to be honest, I can't tell you how often I hear this word, how much I always wanted to be perfect and get everything just right and just be a certain way. And I think one of the things I had to take a step back was almost redefine what success looked like. And a big part of that was almost to now, almost the high standards that I worked to was still incredibly high, but high performing standards without having to try and be perfect in all the different areas. And for you, I guess my question would be as an ambitious woman, how did you, or do you, or would you recommend others to redefine success that actually closely aligns with your personal values and not actually society's, and actually being able to look at what yourself rather than looking at the expectations externally?
Can you see me?
I can see and hear you now. Pause for a second.
Okay, good. Yeah, we should pause for a second. But sometimes it's just blocking out the external noise. I mean, there's so much coming at us, and more now than ever with social media, and it's really, really overwhelming. But sometimes it's just cutting out the noise and reflecting inward. I would say to find somebody to talk to, whether it's a friend, a family member, somebody in your community, a health and wellness, an executive health coach, but find somebody to talk to help you figure it out as well. You shouldn't have to and aren't expected to and don't need to do this on your own. But I mean, without reflecting inward, it's very difficult to get there and figure out what it is that you want, what it is that you need. And that was not an easy thing for me to do. And I'm imagining that it could be difficult for others as well. So you need some support to do it. But look, I mean, the bottom line is we get one chance at this life. We get one. So and support for and cut out a lot of the noise. You've got to reflect inward, ask yourself some really tough questions that may take a very long time to answer. You're not going to sit down and ask, what do I need? What do I want? What do I want to be? And just come up with an answer. These are internal reflections that you got to work at, and talk through. So that's a long day. The help you need, all the noise, and do it on your terms.
Love that. I think this is so important. This is the part, and what are these expectations, these external things? It's being able to go inward is so important. For me, some of the big questions, it's almost whenever I'm trying to make decisions in life, whether it's business, personal, whatever it is, it's what am I building here? And who am I becoming within the process? Because I know real success for me feels aligned. I can feel it inside. I know, people often say, whatever you want to call it, your intuition, whatever, but your body will physically tell you, but it's how in tune you are with it. How often that you listen to be able to feel that. You can feel it within your body. You can feel it within your life. And it's one of those ones, especially with the mentorship and what I do, it's about we don't always have the tools to be able to understand how to do that. If we've been looking externally for so long, I know one of the big things on my journey, I remember the first time I hired a coach, they were what are your goals? And I was don't know. I literally have no idea. I had no idea. And actually, I remember starting my own health and wellness journey, but a big part of that was actually working with them. They would ask me questions. And very quickly, not only did I understand what my goals were, where I wanted to go, who I wanted to be, within a really short space of time, like I skyrocketed, like I was gone, because for the first time I wasn't looking externally, like I was looking within myself, and I was like, oh yeah. And then I got so excited. The next thing I know, like all these things, like they're getting ticked off the list. I used to have this thing, it was called like a fairy godmother goal, which was like beyond what I thought was possible. They all got ticked off. And it just goes to show, like, I think like a big part of the mentorship as well is like doing that with others and being able to help them define what success looks like, but including their well-being. Because I think a lot of the times what we can often do is it can be go, go, go and out there, but actually, like, if we're not connected with ourselves and our body, like, it can make it harder. And also we'll zoom ahead, but at the sacrifice to ourselves. And I think the more in tune we can be, like, I know if I hadn't have as been working on myself as a person, like I wouldn't have been able to discover all those things. If I didn't feel good within myself, within my body, if I didn't feel healthy, if I wasn't doing the things and taking care of myself, there'd be absolutely no way that I would know how to redefine success. And because of that, it's where I'm sat here today. Yeah. It's also a big long answer.
Amazing story.
As is yours. And I think you've had such I've loved working with you and like working on this journey together, especially with like your background and everything that you've done. I think we've been working together now for well over a year, and just to see how your journey has evolved as well. I mean, is there anything you wanted to share about your journey whilst we've got this today? I'm mindful I've kept you for a really long time, but
yeah, it's okay. I would just say, through any of this, any growth and any difficult, I say it's difficult and challenging because it has been, is just be patient. It is a journey, and it's a cliche to be on this journey, but it's hard work. And I would say that for me personally, there were some really deep rooted wirings in my brain, and still are, that we're still working on, that I am very convinced are going to get me where I want to go next. And without doing that hard work and that uncomfortable work and the ups and downs of the work, because it is not linear in any way. I knew it wasn't, but it still shocks me when I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I back down again, you know? But just keeping at it, it's going to be worth it. If I didn't think it were going to be worth it, I wouldn't be doing it. And I want a different second half of my life for myself than the first half. You know, there's no shame in looking back and saying that you want something different than you've had before. And when I say different, it could mean any number of things. So for me, it's that, you know, lower frequency, not necessarily slowing down, but making sure that I'm being purposeful, not just busy. That's not always a clear path either. What does it mean to do something on purpose versus just being busy doing things? But I would say if you're open to the journey and you're open to the work, it is really, really life-changing. It will change your life in all of the best possible ways. But be patient with it if you're deciding to go down this path. For me, my brain has been wired a particular way in some of the areas that I'm trying to change for 30 years. And to think that you can just decide you're not going to do that anymore is silly. It's silly to think that it is so ingrained and so habitual that you really have to undo it. You have to untangle it. And it's hard work. Not hard work like the busyness, but just mentally hard work and getting to know yourself a little bit better. It's all been incredibly rewarding, but very challenging. And anybody who knows me even a little bit, I'm always up for a challenge. And so why not this? Why not put the challenge into myself? Why not challenge myself to be a better person, to live a better life, and to live a life that I want to live as I get into the second half of things.
Yeah. And I think that's the part, is knowing that you have the power to choose it. It's not going to be easy. Like the amount of conversations we have around the importance of like patience and consistency. And you know, that is so hard when it's so ingrained in us to be moving so fast, go, 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 go. And then it's almost like we live in a world where everything comes so instantly now. And then we all of a sudden are like, all these big expectations on ourselves of being like, oh yeah, so I've been living this way for 30 years, but you know what? This time tomorrow, we're just going to be completely different. And it's just knowing like this change does take time and it is hard work, but also like, I would argue like almost choosing your hard. Like if you want to live this life that you want, like, is it worth doing this hard now so you can? Or do you want to stay in the hard of almost settling for the way things currently? It doesn't mean that you have a bad life. It doesn't mean that you're not whatever it is. But if something is important to you, and I know with most high performers, like settling isn't necessarily an option, but sometimes there'll be these areas of their life where they have flown in their careers and all these other things, but then there'll be part in terms of whether it's with their health, with their fitness, or all these different aspects, or these things that they've struggled with their whole life. And like, it just seems too hard because actually like they've done all these other things, but this doesn't work. And it's like, actually imagine if you poured some of these other parts, some of this energy back into this area. Like if you can do that stuff, absolutely you can do this. But there is often that part of being like, there's a problem with me, like I'm the problem. And it's like, no, you're not the problem. It's just that actually we need to work out your way. Like you said, it's those tools of where you can unpick things and be patient with yourself, be kind with yourself, and actually allow yourself to find your way, because we're all individuals, we're all different, and we're all made up so differently. It doesn't mean a lot of the tools can be applied, but it's working out what ones make sense for you and being able to be patient enough, long enough to actually get past this hard. That is the hard part. It's not always these big groundbreaking things that we have to do. It can be the simple, small things done consistently, but a lot of the times we're not patient enough to do that.
That's 100% true. As the patience has been very humbling, and knowing logically that this is how you get there, but it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't see it. It's like trying to, you know, I don't know, walk or I don't know, I'm like a marathon or something. And you're just like taking one step each day to finish the marathon. And you're like, oh my God, like this is never going to end. I'm going to be on this journey forever. And maybe I will be, I don't know. We'll see. But you're right. The patience to be consistent, even when you aren't seeing change.
Yeah. And you know what, the thing is as well with these journeys, like kind of what you said, that I think we're always on a journey, right? We're always a work in progress, because the chances are that you'll tick these things off, I know for me, but then there's something else I want to work on, then there's something else, or there's a new thing. Like if we think of how much you've gone through on your journey and how many things that you've overcome and all these things that you've done, and then you're like, here's the next thing, here's the next. So it's almost like this constant work in progress that we are. And it is hard, but it's almost like actually if you look at all the levels that you've grown in like a relatively short space of time in comparison to the however many years you may have struggled with it before, it's like actually you can go from like here to here, but it does feel hard. But it's being ready to learn about yourself and open up doors that you didn't even know existed, and be willing to put the work in to go through it and get to meet these different levels or these different versions of yourself.
Well, in another session, we can talk about reward and acknowledgement of successes, because it's something that I've had to learn myself. And I'm sure there are others out there that also would love to learn about that.
Totally. I'm sure there's so many. We could be on here for hours, but I'm mindful we're already like coming up to 50 minutes. So Beth, thank you so much for like your honesty and your insight today. And thank you to everyone that's joined us or is catching the replay. And of course, if this conversation with Beth and I does resonate and you are feeling like you're carrying too much and you're craving that more clarity, that energy, that ease, I'd love to connect and for you to learn a little bit more about what we do, the journey Beth and on that I have, a little bit perhaps about the mentorship, because we always want to take these conversations deeper. So if you're ready emotionally, physically and mentally, DM me the word limitless and we can book in discovery call and have a conversation. And equally, if you know anyone else that you feel that would benefit from this live today or the replay, share it with them, because I think coming across these things can make such a profound difference in people's lives and have these breakthroughs. So share it with someone that you love. But thank you, Beth. I really enjoyed this today.
Thank you, Vicky. It's been a pleasure.